to Julius. Puts up a three. And a goal!
Time for Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. You might notice a little bit of a change in the intro there. That's what you get when the football team gets plastered 41-15 and the basketball team destroys their first power conference opponent of the season by 20-plus points. We're shifting the basketball season, people. It is official. There is no reason to give this football outfit the further intros on the football side of things. What a disastrous performance on Saturday night. Arguably the most disappointing outing of the Scott Satterfield era, given where they are in the timeline. 41-15 defeat at the hands of the Kansas State Wildcats was really 41-9. They scored a garbage time touchdown that did not really matter in the grand scheme of things. All in all, though, we will get to that to start the show. Some bad news to start, and then some great news to close it, with Cincinnati undefeated in its road trips over the past week, covered both spreads on the betting side of things, so they outperformed what the odds makers thought they would do. It's just been a stellar start to the season for the 7th-ranked team in the country on KenPom's analytical numbers on KenPom.com. Before we get to all that, though, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting right here on Bearcat Blitz. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL, to UFC, and the rest of the MMA world. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. Welcome in Neil Meyer, my co-host of the Front Office News, Cincinnati's rival site. I am, of course, Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, and you can catch Bearcat Blitz on Talkin' Cast with Russ Heltman, our YouTube page, or on Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever podcast platform you frequent. You can catch us there. And people not wanting to frequent back to this result, Neil, 41-15. We'll start on the offensive side of the football for Cincinnati, who falls to 5-6 on the campaign. They have followed nearly the exact final month finishing that I projected going into the year. Had them losing 3 in a row, entering this game and fighting for one last chance to get a bowl bid. I was confident they'd be able to pull it off before the season and rally around Scott Satterfield and get this victory against TCU this weekend. Neil, from what I saw on Saturday, especially on the offensive side of the football, I am a lot less confident in ending up finally fully picking the Bearcats later on this week to beat TCU in what now will be another underdog opportunity for Scott Satterfield, given they are betting underdogs at home against the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, no, most certainly, Russ. And I know you and I both gave our predictions before the season, and we both had this team going either 6-6 or 7-5. But the opportunity to go 6-6 is still there. But it's going to take a lot on Saturday versus a very tough TCU team right now, who's arguably one of the hottest teams within the Big 12 Conference.
Top 35 team nationally in most analytic metrics.
And on a roll right now is TCU. So it's going to be an interesting matchup on Saturday with the Horned Frogs. Obviously, as you mentioned, being underdogs at Nippert Stadium is something they haven't really seen all season, or haven't been underdogs at home all year. So it's going to be interesting.
First time they've been home dogs.
It's going to be interesting to see how this team comes out and responds. Obviously, first Nip at Night game as well of the season. Fans wanted one. They get the opportunity there, a 6 p.m. kickoff. It's not the official Nip at Night with the 8 p.m. or 7:30 kickoff time, but it's a little earlier Nip at Night.
Nice and freezing for the fans to enjoy a Nip at Night. Nice and freezing for them. Lovely.
Still expect a full Nippert Stadium on Saturday, but it's going to be interesting. The bowl berth is still there, but they're going to
need a lot of discounted tickets out there, Neil. I don't know if we're going to be seeing a full Nippert.
Well, holiday weekend, Black Friday as well, always makes things difficult for those traveling. But
that's true.
Overall, another opportunity still looms for Cincinnati to get to that 6th game and get to a bowl game for the first time under Scott Satterfield. But right now, after losing 4 games straight, Cincinnati is searching for some momentum here in just about every measure as possible.
Looking at the offense, just another disastrous day, especially when you think about a day where Corey Kiner goes for 9.3 yards per carry, 140 yards, and you only put up 9 points when the game really matters. 1 touchdown scored when the game really matters. Brendan Sorsby not helped by his receiving core at all, and he once again didn't help himself create many plays out of mostly nothing in this one. 21 of 39, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another interception. He turns the ball over again in this game. 108.7 passer rating, lowly 54% completion mark. But Neil, he was actually the highest graded player on Cincinnati's offense in this game, 71.4 overall. The receiving core once again continues to let Sorsby and this offense down, while Sorsby has just been unable to answer and lift things up individually in his own right. 71.4 overall grade for Sorsby in this one. He had a season high 3 passes dropped by his receivers in this game. Just rough night all around, especially for Joe Royer, who was one of the 5 lowest graded players offensively in this game. 51.5 overall grade for Royer. Tony Johnson had a nice day, really the only receiver and only pass catcher, largely outside of Corey Kiner, that did anything in this one. 68.2 overall, and then 66.1 for Luke Kandra. DeAndre Buford has been an abject liability all season long, really his entire Bearcats career. He has been flat out bad. 2 games this season graded above 62 overall, and once again below 50 in this game. Second worst grade on the entire team with a 44.4 mark. Brady Lichtenberg came in for mop-up duty. He was the lowest graded player on the offense. So there's no reason to think that if you're going to bench Brendan Sorsby for any reason down the stretch here, a lot like they would, that things are going to get better on the quarterback side of things. Then Francis Sherman, man, he continues to be a liability for this offense. 50.8 overall grade. More issues in the blocking game in this one. Just a lot of problems, Neil. And when you think about offensively, receivers weren't getting open once again. They were unable to throw the ball down the field. It continues to be a massive problem when you look at them on 15-plus yard passes in this game, 1 of 8 after going, I believe, 0 for 3 or 1 for 3 in the last game, 1 of 8 for 33 yards. There is no reason to respect this passing offense right now, Neil, and that's why you put up 9 points in non-garbage time play, all while Corey Kiner ran for 140 yards. It didn't matter at all because the receivers and Brendan Sorsby and this offense overall, led by Brad Glenn, leading the receivers and as the offensive coordinator, part of this brain trust putting together this offense, he has not been good enough at all. The receivers are getting worse as the seasons have gone on across 2 seasons at Cincinnati, and the offense has gotten worse as seasons have gone on. Ask Scott Satterfield, what's going on, man? Like, what is going on with the offense? Unable to put up 25-plus points in the past, I believe, definitely the past 5 games, maybe the past 6 games. Have not put up 25-plus since the loss at Texas Tech. And he didn't have an answer. He didn't have an answer in the press conference. They're searching right now. They don't have an answer for what's going wrong. And in back-to-back seasons, Neil, you have a 4-plus game losing streak smack you in Scott Satterfield's tenure. It's just unacceptable. You cannot lose 4 games in a row each season while you're at UC. It's just, you're never going to pick up momentum doing that. You're never going to check off your next goal doing that. And right now, it feels like one of the biggest regular season games of the decade for this program. The feeling and the outness on Scott Satterfield from this fan base is teetering heavily. I feel it in my writing. I feel it from the fan base. You feel it from everybody talking. They're out right now. They're completely out on Scott Satterfield, justifiably. He's given no reason for them to be in, given the 60th ranked recruiting class coming in 2025 and another season where you're below or at 500. Massive game on Saturday, Neil, especially for this offense, for Scott Satterfield, for him to pick up and feel like any momentum can come out of this season. They have to get a win, or at least have to show some life offensively and get above that 25-plus point mark for the first time in almost 6 weeks.
Yeah, Russ, obviously, as you mentioned, too, you look down at the schedule. Cincinnati was riding a 2-game winning streak just about a month ago following their victory over UCF. and versus arguably one of the best teams in the country right now in Arizona State. Now, it was a different Arizona State team, but right there you have your win.
Complete asterisk, Neil. Complete asterisk. That was not the real Arizona State. Sam Levitt is 50, 60, maybe 70 position spots higher in terms of quarterback rankings than what I think it was some guy named, I don't even remember what the guy's name was, the backup for Arizona State, but he was horrible. Played like a bottom 30 quarterback in the country. Sam Levitt has played like a top 35 quarterback all season. I'm fully convinced Arizona State wins that game if they have their starting quarterback intel.
Yeah, it obviously would.
And how many points did they score in that one, Neil?
24.
Yeah.
But overall, that's the point I'm getting to there, Russ, is you look down at the last 6 games, as you mentioned, dating back to Texas Tech. They put up 19 versus UCF, 24 versus Arizona State, 23 versus Colorado, 24 versus West Virginia, 17 versus Iowa State, 15 versus Kansas State. The offense has quickly sputtered downwards since Big 12 play has started. Outside of that shootout versus Texas Tech, the offense has been struggling to find anything going. And I mean, you're looking at the positives to take away from Kansas State. Corey Kiner averaging nearly 10 yards a carry. And Russ, you and I have been saying it for a while. Sometimes you wonder why he's not getting 20 carries a game, and Evan Pryor getting maybe 10 behind him. That running offense is something that they need to utilize, and maybe that allows things to open up in the passing game. But Cincinnati,
they were letting them run, Neil. They were letting them run. They were willing to let them run. They played that too high, that 3 safety shell coverage, like so many teams have played over the last month. They didn't care if UC ran the football because they knew that they were not going to be able to execute in the red zone, and that's exactly what happened again in this game. 2 for 2 in the red zone, but they only got there 2 times, and they were just unable to move the ball consistently in both the passing and the rushing game to get in the red zone, even getting the ability to score.
Yeah, and then you look down after this game. I mean, you're looking down, you're 3 of 12 on third downs and 0 for 5 on fourth downs, and you run 69 total plays. 3 of 12 is not going to win you any games in the Big 12. Going 3 of 12 on third downs, especially with how good this conference is. And then 0 and 5 on fourth downs. And yes, most of those were probably towards late in the game with the game already out of hand. But you have to find ways to convert on third downs, Russ. And I think for the most of Big 12 play, you and I have talked about this as well off the air, that Cincinnati's been playing behind the sticks. And that's a huge down part into what they're trying to do on the offensive things. But when you're playing from behind the sticks, it's not going to do you much good in those third down situations when you're having to go 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 10, whatever it might be. But you got to find a way to get ahead of the sticks to play this offense into what they are trying to do with Scott Satterfield and Brad Glenn there as the offensive coordinator. But overall, they just need to hit the easy layups that they get. Brendan Sorsby missed another easy, wide open, what could have been another touchdown to Evan Pryor, another home run hitting ball. And they missed that opportunity again. But you have to find ways to capitalize on what teams are giving you. And if you can't hit those little short dink passes, take those chunk plays when the opportunity presents itself, it's going to be hard to get anything going in the passing game as well. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what the offense looks like versus TCU, obviously being what could be the final week of the season, pending on the outcome of Saturday. But overall, the offense has to be better, especially with the veteran offensive line, as you mentioned, DeAndre Buford. And
fully healthy line.
Offensive line is fully healthy and still have not been able to get the production out of the offense that this team has been hoping for. And heading into the season, Russ, I mean, everyone looked down at this team as that was the centerpiece of this offense, was the returning offensive line alongside Corey Kiner. And then on top of it, Corey gets going for 100 or 1,000 yards for the second consecutive season. That's a big accomplishment. But outside of that, the last few weeks, there has been no offense outside of the run game.
9 tackles for loss given up in this game, 4 sacks allowed. I mean, your fully healthy offensive line, really fully healthy offense for the most part, outside of Joey Belgian not playing much this year. I mean, Neil, they have been wildly lucky with how healthy they've been amidst a wildly lucky and fortunate scheduling break this season. And Neil, tell me how many teams this program has beaten in 2024 in the Big 12 conference ranked above them. You want to tell me how many teams they've beaten that are higher than them in the standings right now?
Probably just Arizona State.
That would be correct. And what did we say about that game? They won by 10 points, put up 24 against the backup quarterback at home. It's not even close to good enough at all. And now they get to face a TCU team that is rolling, coming off a 49-28 win over Arizona. And we talked about the layups, needing to hit those. Even if they hit that layup against with Evan Pryor, or Sorsby to Evan Pryor, still only 22 points. You got a whole lot of other issues on the other side of the ball that would have made that touchdown really irrelevant anyways, because of how much dominance and smacked in the mouthus. And it's not even a term, but I just made it up because you got to mix stuff up with how just disintegrating this team has looked over the past 4 to 5 weeks. Defense no different. We'll get to that after this break on Bearcat Blitz. Back here on Bearcat Blitz, my head's in a pretzel. My words are in a pretzel. My brain's in a pretzel after this Bearcats football team has gone from 5-2 to 5-6, back-to-back years with 4-game losing streaks for the first time since the 2016 and 2017 seasons. 41 points allowed against Kansas State. A big reason why, Neil, it was their lowest graded game on PFF this season. 58.4 overall team grade for Cincinnati. They have now, Neil, posted the 3 lowest graded games this season, all within the last 4 weeks. 62.9 at Colorado, 62.8 home against West Virginia, 76.4 against Iowa State. So they perked up a little bit there. Still got doubled up 34-17. And then the 41-15 loss produces a 58.4 overall grade for this team and the lowest defensive grade of the season. It's not hard to see why at 52.8 overall from this one. They got absolutely boat raced, Neil. 41-15, smacked in the mouth, driven up and down the field. They give up 40 carries for 281 yards and 7 yards per attempt, 72 yards and a touchdown for quarterback Avery Johnson, 143 yards on 9.5 yards per carry for DJ Giddens, 2 touchdowns for him. Neil, this was an absolute home domination on the offensive side of the ball by Kansas State, literally from start to finish. The Bearcats not even close to prepared for the amount of physicality that they faced on this side of the ball.
Yeah, and Russ, heading into this one, you and I both talked about it. After watching Kansas State's head coach Chris Kleeman's press conference earlier in the week last week, heading into this one, once he said that they were going to let Avery Johnson, quote unquote, let Avery Johnson loose. I mean,
steamroller fired up, baby.
Steamroll fired up, and I mean, look what happened. And next thing you know, they made the change at offensive coordinator, and Avery Johnson is looking like what Kansas State wanted them to look like at the beginning of the season. And of course, it just happened to come against Cincinnati. But I mean, Cincinnati just had no answer rush to the run game. Like Kansas State was getting whatever they wanted in the run game, and I mean, it was clear from the very first drive what Kansas State was trying to do. Avery Johnson's first drive, first carry goes 33. Second carry goes for a 21-yard score. And I mean, Russ, I think right then and there, everybody kind of knew what this game was about to be like. And they knew they were going to pound Cincinnati in the mouth and run the football. And that's exactly what happened. But DJ Giddens was DJ Giddens, and there's a reason why he is one of the best backs in the Big 12. But arguably, Cincinnati has done a decent job at containing the highly profiled running backs in this conference. But, man, was he a tough matchup on Saturday night, Russ. 15 carries, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns. And anytime a guy is averaging 10 yards a carry, like Corey Kiner was in this game, you're not going to stop that much often. And then a long of 32 yards, Avery Johnson, 10 for 72, a touchdown, including a 33-yard run as his longest run of the night. But anytime you run for 40 times and then you rack up nearly 300 yards of total offense on the ground, it's going to be a long day. That's going to wear your defense down, and that's exactly what happened in this one. Despite the time of possession, Russ, being relatively close, Cincinnati their defense just had no inability to stop the run. You can say they were missing Jake Golday due to the injury and banged up. Obviously, he's been a key part, but there was nothing you could do in that situation when guys are busting holes in wide open coverages, getting 6-7 yards a carry, especially versus a high-powered team in Kansas State. The run defense simply had to be better. Obviously, you rush 3. Teams are going to double team Dante Corleone like we've seen all season. Until you get pressured to the quarterback, teams are going to use and abuse that and run the ball at will. And a performance like Saturday, that's going to be the outcome you get until you find ways to stop the run.
0 QB hits and 0 sacks. That's almost like that's really hard to do, Neil. Like that's
very
hard
to
do. Like against a guy like Avery Johnson as well, you don't get 1 QB hit. A guy who is not a very good passer, very raw in that sense, is a guy who's going to hold on to the football, is going to look to run at most points if he doesn't like what he's seeing downfield. It's just
very inexperienced still as well.
Right. Like, and you don't hit the quarterback one time in a game where your back's against the wall. It's just everything was there for them to respond, for them to get up off the mat and prove that they can compete, not beat some of the best teams in this conference, but just compete with the best in this conference. And we're still waiting to see that from this defense and this program in general. I'm not counting a beating Arizona State at home with a backup quarterback as you competing and beating the best of the best in this conference. Somebody pointed it out recently. They still haven't beaten a true Big 12 team. Arizona State's brand new, and you could maybe count that as a true Big 12 win, but I don't know. Like I said, it's against a backup quarterback. That's a massive asterisk.
Yep. And looking back on the stats from it, Jeff Sims went 12 for 25 in that matchup.
Yeah, he wasn't very good at all in that game. Like, not accurate, not good. Jeff Sims, thank you. I knew it was some like random creative player name that was escaping me on that front. But 41-15, no sacks, no quarterback hits. Neil, they gave up 9 plays of 10 plus yards on the ground. Yep. 9 carries that went for 10 plus yards. Just not even close to being able to stop Kansas State in this game. 5 more passes of 106 yards total, or 5 more passes of 15 plus yards. They give up 14 total big plays on the ground and through the air. Just not going to win football games doing that. And I've tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I've tried to. It's along with the rest of the fan base, with the fan base themselves, it's getting really hard to see how this is going to get much better. You got a guy like Dante Corleone. Maybe he comes back next year because, Neil, it's been a precipitous fall in production from Dante from his redshirt freshman campaign to last year to this season. Maybe there's some lingering fatigue, some lingering issues with the blood clots that hampered his production throughout this year. But another game where you don't really notice Corleone in this one. He overall, I believe, had just 1 tackle. Yep, 1 tackle overall. Was a 66, I believe, overall grade in this one. So it was in the top 5 on defense, but that's not saying much from this outing. 66.3 overall. Neil, he's gone from 93.8 grade in 22, 83.3 in 23 to 78.8 this season. Gone from elite to just very good. And you can feel it with how they are getting smacked in the mouth in the rushing game. Been a couple good performances here or there, stopping the run. But all in all, obviously, this one not even close to good enough. And every time, Neil, it feels like they've faced an elite rushing attack, they've gotten destroyed.
Yep.
And that outside of Cam Scatabo, but what do they not have in that game? They didn't have their starting quarterback, who is a top 40 player in the country and will be on a lot of the major all-transfer teams, first-team player all-transfer teams at the end of the season. I already saw he was on ESPN's from a couple weeks ago. Just a really disappointing afternoon or really disappointing evening from the Cincinnati Bearcats football team, a football team that it's just really hard to say they have improved, that things are getting better, and that things will continue to get better going into next year. When you think about outside the top 50 recruiting class of 24, another outside the top 50 recruiting class of 25, and no real pathway to bring in a Quinshawn Judkins or like that from the transfer portal. You're not bringing in some 5-star player that everybody knows about. They're going to have to, once again, mine the smaller ranks. They're going to have to hunt for the diamonds in the rough, try to throw it together that way. It's getting to feel like, Neil, like the Bearcats football program is feeling like the Bengals of the Big 12, the Jaguars of the Big 12, where you have to get elite coaching talent to outweigh the issues you have putting together a roster and the issues you have just being under the guise of the big brother, Ohio State, in this state, because they have clearly not been able to recruit it to a high level thus far, a high enough level to maneuver Ohio State and other Big Ten outfits around the area as well. Get to a much more positive side of things in terms of basketball after this on Bearcat Blitz. From a 4-game losing streak on the gridiron to a 5-game winning streak to open the season for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball. They go 2-0 on the road this past week. And Neil, we don't have much time to talk about this game. We are going to dive fully into Bearcats basketball over the next week or two. Only one more football game, likely just one more football game, given they are underdogs in this upcoming outfit to cover in the 24 season. But a lot to cover with the Bearcats basketball team moving forward. 81-58. Easy, no question win over Georgia Tech on the road. They cover just like a breeze as 7-point favorites. Jizzle James, 14 points. Connor Hickman, 14 points. Dylan Mitchell, 14 points. Simas Lukosius, 12 points. Neil, they've had 4 or more double-digit scores in every game this season. It feels like we are watching one of, if not the deepest teams in the country. They've been one of the most dominant teams in the country. I won't say they've been one of the best because they have faced the 300th ranked strength of schedule on KenPom.com right now. So they haven't really faced anybody of substance outside of Georgia Tech, who they destroyed as a top 1 team in the country on KenPom. But man, Neil, like the way they were able to just power through without Dan Skillings in this one. Dylan Mitchell led the way on the boards. They powered through Arrington Page's foul trouble, out in 7 minutes, and just got great production all across the board offensively. They're getting balanced showings from everybody. Jizzle James, another 14 and 7. Hickman, his best and most efficient outing as a Bearcat, 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting. And then Mitchell with his first double-double as a Bearcat, all while Lukosius goes another 40% mark from 3. They're cooking, Neil. They're rolling. 52% field goal percentage for Cincinnati. I believe they're number 2 nationally in effective field goal rate so far this year, and held Georgia Tech to 36% from the field. Neil, with how good this defense is, if they are number 2 nationally in effective field goal rate all season long, they will be right there in the last 2 weekends of the NCAA tournament competing for the national championship. That's a fact.
Yeah, no, most certainly that is a fact there too, Russ. And I think the best thing to take
it's
away.
hard not to if you're shooting that well and playing that great a defense.
I think the biggest thing to take away too, Russ, over the last week for Cincinnati is how much better Connor Hickman has been playing in the natural 2 position with the return of Day Thomas. I think you can't talk about
same wavelength. That's what I wrote about this morning for the Alabama State game.
You can't talk about this basketball team without talking about Day Thomas's impact on this team since his return. Because you look at it, what he did versus Northern Kentucky. Connor Hickman had one of his best games. Then you go down on the road to Georgia Tech. Day Thomas has another solid performance. Connor Hickman then has his best game of his season and Bearcat career, 14 points, 6 of 8 shooting. And Day Thomas's impact of this team, we've heard Wes Miller talk about it multiple times, but his impact is more impactful than people might realize due to the depth and the talent on this team that he brings and provides so much for this team. But Russ, man, did Dylan Mitchell look good on Saturday? Cincinnati looked good as well. Dylan Mitchell looked fantastic as well. And near double.
If he's hitting a corner 3, like even once every 2 games. Whoa.
And Russ, you and I have seen him work on that 3-point shot in practice and whatnot. But to see that one go through in the game could unlock a whole different thing for Dylan Mitchell. And I don't know if you guys saw the bench reaction. The bench reaction was fantastic when they saw that go through. But overall, the biggest takeaway too, Russ, is that's their first road test. We are all kind of questioning, would their road shooting struggles might come into play, but you look down and you see that you shot nearly 50% from the field in this game, 52% roughly. That's what you want to see. Cincinnati is now 9-0 versus the AAC dating back to 2008, if I remember right. 5-0 for the first time in recent years, with an opportunity to loom ahead and potentially start this season 7-0 after Villanova. Like the Villanova was another big game circled. And obviously you look at what they're doing right now, not good, but it's still a big time matchup. And Cincinnati's just getting better. And then there's even more better news with Dan Skilling's return potentially looming quicker than many have thought. So
Yeah.
overall,
I would honestly be surprised if we don't see him for the shootout. Maybe a little surprised before then, but that week gap between the Howard game and the shootout is definitely somewhere, so a place where we could see Dan Skilling's fully return.
Yeah, and if that happens, it's going to be dangerous for Cincinnati. It really will be, and it's going to be a fun team to watch. Obviously, this is a fun group of guys and a high-energy group of guys, but Russ, looking down right now, they're not even hitting their peak yet. Obviously, you out-rebounded in 2 of your 4 games.
Great game yet. And they're 4-1 against the spread.
Yeah, and 4-1 against the spread. And any of you guys who follow the betting apps or whatnot, seeing what they did versus Georgia Tech at, what was it, Russ, minus 8.5 heading into that game?
Yeah, depending on where you shot.
Has you feeling some sort of way for your sports bettors out there heading into the Big 12 season? So overall, the sky's the limit. And if they continue to get that production, Russ, where you're seeing 4 or 5 guys figuring double figures, this is going to be a team that is expected, expected to make it past the second weekend in March.
Well said by Neil right there. And I wish we had more time on this Bearcat Blitz. We are going to give full-on segments, two full segments to the basketball team on Thursday before a quick preview of the final football contest of the year for Cincinnati against TCU. They're right where I thought they'd be, 5-6 entering the final game of the year. Still a chance to make this a successful season. It's all about how they respond this week and how well they can contain this TCU team coming in the Nippert Stadium, a nip-it night venue, a scheduling break for Cincinnati. All hope is not lost for this season, but they only got one more chance to make it whole. We'll see if they can. We'll preview all that in the coming days here on Bearcat Blitz, presented by Bet Online.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a 3.